All right, solving with square roots. Well, we're basically just doing algebra skills, friends. If you haven't understood this before, if you haven't been taught this before, the only way that you could cancel out a square, a 2 as an exponent, is to square root both sides. Now, the one trick that's going to happen today is I want you to write it as plus and minus the square root of 81. So we got to simplify that, okay? Well, plus the square root of 81 is a 9. And then the minus square root of 81 is a negative 9. So there's actually going to be two solutions. There are two roots. There are two numbers that make this work. Okay, if you don't believe me, take a look at the calculator right here. Okay, so which two numbers squared make 81? Well, 9 squared makes 81. Negative 9 squared also makes 81. So you're going to get two answers for your square roots today. So make sure you do plus and minus. Again, I can't stress this enough. Plus and minus. Take 5 seconds to write it out, and then you're going to be good to go. I kind of have an extra one right here. We'll get to that in a second. So you're probably wondering where that came from. I wrote it down later. Okay, let's solve for x. Order of operations. Remember, we want to get rid of the weakest connection first. A square is pretty powerful. It's probably going to be the last thing you get rid of. Plus 25, that's pretty weak. Let's get rid of that. Remember, when we solve, we get rid of the weakest connections first. Sweet. Now we have an x squared equaling 100. Okay, mental math people probably got this answered figured out. Square root. X is going to equal plus and negative square root of 100. So 10 will be one of your answers, and negative 10 will be the other answer. Okay, so again, most of the time, you're going to get two solutions when you square root these things. Okay, now look at this one. Okay, so again, just like using algebra, you want to get rid of the weakest connections. I wish I gave myself more room, but how would you disconnect a 3 by multiplication? You would divide. Okay, when you do that, okay, 147 divided by 3, lucky enough, is actually 49. Okay, mental math people probably got it figured out already. Plus and minus 7. So you could also write it like that if you want to save yourself some room. Plus and minus 7. When you square them, equal 49. Let's check our answers really quick, okay, especially that last one. Okay, oh look, I did the calculation right there. So 3 times 7 squared, 147. 3 times a negative 7 squared, 147. There you go. So 7 and negative 7 work for this one right here. Now we come across some problems when things get not so nice. So far, pretty nice answers, not too bad of algebra. You might have a situation come up like this. X squared plus 50 equals 25. Oh, not too bad. I can solve this one. Minus 50, I can make a better 5 than that, excuse me. Okay. X squared equals a negative 25. Square root. I wonder what the calculator is going to say when I try to actually do that. Square root a negative 25. Error. Non-real answers. Okay. In real mode, all calculators must result in real number. So that number doesn't exist. You can't actually square root a negative number. Okay. You can't square root. You could have a negative square root. Okay. Like we did over here. You can have a negative outside the symbol. You cannot ever have a negative inside the radical sign. Okay, the reason, basically what this is saying, there's no number that does that. There's no number that you can square plus 50 that'll make 25. Okay, anytime you square something, it becomes a positive. So there's no positive number that you can add to 50 to go back to 20. It doesn't work. Okay, so that's one of those no solution situations. If I graph that, it wouldn't look very pretty. All right, so you may not get solutions. As soon as you have a positive x squared and a negative number, not going to happen. You could have something like this really quick. You could have like a negative 2x squared equals like a negative 50. Okay, so don't automatically assume, oh, that's not going to work. Well, careful. If you divide by a negative and divide by a negative 2, you'd have an x squared equals 25. So that one could work. Okay, so just because you have a negative, don't assume it's automatically going to be negative. Or sorry, it's automatically not going to work. Make sure you're all the way down to a plain x squared before you assume anything. Okay, last example. Okay, what happens if you have things that are not so pretty? Well, for me, it's okay if you just leave it as a square root symbol for now, as a radical, excuse me. Plus 10, you get 85. 85 is not a perfect square. So for me right now, you can leave it as a plus and minus square root of 85. Leave it like that. If you need to round and throw it in the calculator, but for me, if it's not a perfect square, you can leave it like that. We're going to spend an entire lesson on simplifying square roots in chapter 10. So for right now, that's okay with me. All right, that's how you solve with square roots. Treat it like regular algebra. Do your steps, remove the weakest things first, and then square root at the end. You're going to get 2 answers if it works. You're going to get no answers if it does not work.